All right, B-listers, you know the drill.
This is your official spoiler alert for the episode.
If you don't want any spoilers, stop the episode now.
And if you don't care about spoilers, hold on to your seats because this episode starts
Now.
Hi, Liz.
Hi, Court.
And hello, fellow B critics. Welcome to another episode of the B Critics Podcast.
This movie is a continuation of a beloved classic Halloween movie. A little scary, a little slasher, a little cheesy, but that's to be expected.
Yes, definitely all of those things. But before we really get into it, let's tell the people where to find us.
You can follow the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube at bcriticspodcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow our Instagram for all the best movie content. Also, if you love our show and want to support us, be sure you're sharing with friends and family or just fellow movie lovers that you encounter. That's the best way to support us.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely subscribe. Definitely share with a friend. We really, really appreciate it. Okay. I think it's time to get into the episode.
All right. So, our guest critic for this episode is Martin from the Film versus Film podcast. Hi, Martin. Welcome to the B Critics.
Hello. It is a pleasure to be here.
Hi, Martin.
Pleasure
It
to
is
have
a pleasure
you.
to have you. Yeah. We're really
Thank
excited to have you here after recording with you on your podcast.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
Yeah.
It was
and
really fun.
We'll link it in the show notes. So, if anyone wants to go
nice.
listen,
Cool. Yeah.
you can check it out there.
Yeah, the kitchen knives were out on that one for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, why do we always watch like relatively scary movies with you?
I don't know. It's becoming a trend.
Mhm.
Oh
It
my
is the
gosh.
season though, so it's perfect.
Yeah.
All right, Martin. So we're gonna give you a chance here to introduce yourself. So tell us who you are, how you're associated with the movie industry, and then tell us a little bit about Film versus Film podcast.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm Martin. I'm the host of the Film versus Film podcast. Like before I did the podcast, I did a bit of like amateur like filmmaking. I did some documentaries in like Asia, in India and Laos, filming teachers and things like that. So I've always kind of had like the filmmaking bug. And then as everyone knows, the pandemic happened, so that's where a lot of podcasts were born, like mine. So me and my buddy Boaz, not currently doing it. He's taking a bit of a break right now, but hopefully he'll be back. So we have a look at like cinema releases or streaming releases, and we pick a subject from that release, like a director, an actor, or a genre, and I get the guest or Boaz to pick like a film from that subject. I pick one, or me and Boaz collectively pick one, and we talk about films in terms of directing, writing, and acting, and we kind of score it out of 10. And you may use decimals if you want. Some people don't like decimals, some people really do. They get really into it, which is fun.
Yeah.
And then we we do that process twice and see who wins. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And we do like legend episodes as well if there's not a release out, so someone that's sadly passed away, or like someone that's had a really long career or just done a lot of shit in movies. And pick subjects around that. And we do spoiler specials as well. I guess when this comes out, we'll be doing like a spoiler on The Exorcist Believer, and we've currently got one out as well for The Creator as well.
Oh, sweet.
Cool. I know that we had so much fun on your podcast. It's a really, really cool concept for a podcast. And I love being able to compare the two films and like kind of get out of my comfort zone too. Because one of the movies that we watched was Altered States, which I never would have watched on my own. So that was cool.
Right.
All right, Martin. Well, thank you so much for introducing yourself. And we've come to the point now where it's time to introduce the movie. So, Martin, if you'd like the honor.
Yeah, sure. So when Liz messaged me about like what films I had the choice for choosing from, so it was like The Nightmare Before Christmas or Halloween 2018, and I was like, that is such an easy choice. I'm going with The Nightmare Before Christmas. And then I was like, hang on a sec. Hold up.
I was like, wait, what? Did not watch in
Hang
preparation.
on. When the B Critics were on my podcast, they had their kitchen knives out and there were some interesting scores. So I was like, you guys are scary. I'm like, I'm protecting The Nightmare Before Christmas
Oh no, we would have
from
loved it.
your
That was my
knives.
recommendation.
So I was like, you can poke Michael Myers like a piñata for this one. That's totally fine.
Oh, we definitely will. Or at least I will. I don't know about you, Liz, but
Oh, I've seen Liz's letterbox score for the original. I was like, what? Oh my God. You should really
But
keep that quiet for
I should
the
hide.
diehard Halloween fans.
I am glad that we're watching it though and discussing it because it is such a classic movie, and it's cool
Yeah.
to discuss like the modern version of this movie. And it
Mhm.
it never goes away. I feel like they're going to keep making these movies like
Mm,
forever.
yeah. Well, there's recent news out. I don't know if you've heard that like A24 have like bought the rights for the Halloween
I saw
franchise,
that. I
That's
did see
cool.
that.
but like
I
as a
like
TV show.
A24.
So
Mhm.
I feel like that's kind of a really interesting way they could take it. And I've read
Mhm.
as well that they could like build that as a cinematic thing as well. So
I
Yeah.
could
yeah.
totally see that. I when I was watching this movie, I had the feeling like right when it started that I was like, this feels like a TV show. Like I've never
Yeah.
watched a movie and felt like I was watching like a TV series. It's like I feel like so much could happen, and it we'll talk about it more, but I think it could do well as a TV series.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
With things like I mean, I very much doubt like Jamie Lee Curtis would come back for that. I think she's a bit Halloween out, worn
Yeah.
out by these films. She's
She's
been in
done
a
her
lot,
time.
so
Mhm.
But yeah, they could explore like more of the themes that these films go for, especially in this one, like with trauma and how that affects someone that's had to live with such a traumatic event for such a long time. So
Mhm.
I would think that kind of subject works better on TV than in this film.
Yeah.
Liz, you want to give the movie of the episode description?
Yeah. So, Halloween 2018, at this point, 40 years has gone by since Michael Myers first hunted Laurie Strode. While being transported from his incarceration facility, Michael causes the bus to crash and escapes. Wildly enough, he is able to find his way back to Haddonfield to finish what he started 40 years earlier. But this time, Laurie is ready for him. She spent the last 40 years preparing the perfect trap for Michael that even he won't see coming. Laurie enlists the help of her daughter and granddaughter to execute the man who's been haunting her ever since that horrible night in 1978. Will the trio of final women be able to complete their mission, or will Michael claim 3 lives this Halloween?
So, this movie is a direct sequel to the original 1978 Halloween movie,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is cool because there's been a lot of other movies in between. And I thought that was probably a good choice to just kind of like toss out some of the other storylines and just like have this one be
Mm.
like a clean storyline because it made it easy for somebody like me to like jump in and follow it and enjoy it.
Yeah, there's even like a line from Allison's character where they're like talking about it, and like her friend says like, "Didn't people think Michael Myers was your grandmother's
Yeah.
brother?" And like,
Yeah.
oh
She's
no,
like,
that's just
no.
something that people made up. I'm like, wow, that's ballsy to like just completely disregard
Entire
loads of
movies in the
films,
franchise.
you know.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Um, so this movie is an hour 46 minutes long.
Mhm.
It's a horror movie, kind of like a crime movie too, a thriller. It's rated R, as it should be. It's pretty gory. And this particular one came out in 2018. So that's exactly 40 years after the original film. It's pretty cool. And this film, the producer was Malik Akkad, who is the son of Mustafa Akkad, who was the producer of the original 1978 Halloween movie, which I thought was cool.
That's cool.
This one is a Blumhouse Productions movie, which I think they're known for, like Paranormal Activity. Is their like claim to
They
fame?
do horror, like all kinds of horror.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's certainly a horror studio that's really kind of doing pretty well. Like at the moment, they did like Megan this year.
Oh, cool.
Didn't they
And
do The Exorcist too?
I think so. Yeah,
And they
yeah,
did the Netflix original Totally Killer too.
and Get
Oh,
Out,
cool.
I believe.
And then it was distributed by Universal Pictures. The director on this one is David Gordon Green, and notable cast members. We'll talk about more, but we've got Jamie Lee Curtis, who plays Laurie Strode. She's the same character as the original. Judy Greer plays her daughter Karen, and Andy Matichak plays Karen's daughter, so Laurie's granddaughter, Allison. And then I already mentioned this, but this one is the 11th installment in the film series. So it's a direct sequel to the original Halloween movie.
Yeah, just 40 years later.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've never seen the original Halloween movie. And I know you both have. So I'm curious to hear a little bit of how you think it compares. Like, obviously the way the movie is made is going to be different because so much has happened with technology in the industry, but not only that, I think like audiences are a little bit different than they were back in the 70s. But curious to hear like how y'all think they compare.
So when I first saw this one, like when I was quite little, like between 10 to 13, like I used to have like birthday parties, like sleepovers with my friends, and like we would watch scary movies. And the first one we watched was like Alien, and only one of my friends stayed downstairs. Everyone went upstairs to watch The Emperor's New Groove. I was like, really?
Also a great
Come
film.
on. That was such an amazing experience watching Alien for the first time, like not knowing any of the actors in that. So when I was quite small, so then I was like, Dad, we need to watch more scary movies on Fridays. And then the next one was like Halloween 1978, and wow, it was just incredibly scary watching it that young. I mean, my dad just didn't really care that much. He was like, yeah, it's fine, it's only a movie.
Sounds like a typical dad move.
Yeah. So yeah, it really kind of freaked me out, that movie. I think it's just because it just felt so real, and I think it kind of made it scarier with the fact that we watched it on VHS, I guess showing my age now, but it has that kind of grainy quality. And what's great about the original film, it just has atmosphere. There's just bags of atmosphere. It really creates that really creepy, scary tension throughout the movie. And then with then with this one, it's like not there, in my opinion. Like that's one of the biggest disappointments for this sequel, that just you can basically tell that David Gordon Green is not an experienced horror director.
Yeah, he's not.
No. And you can tell.
Yeah. You already alluded to this, Martin. I did not like the original. But I will say something the original did really well that the 2018, which 2018 is not a remake, it's the sequel, which I think was smart not to do a remake because remakes no, people are just going to be upset about it. But they didn't utilize the music. Like in the original, the theme music that they have is like a constant throughout the film. Like every time you hear the music, you know, like, okay, like it's building suspense. You're like, all right, where is he? Like,
Yeah.
you know, you're looking for him and all that. And I think they only played the theme one time in the 2018 version, which is
weird because like
yeah.
John Carpenter created a new score for this film. So I'm
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
really? You're only using it, very little for this film is kind of bizarre for me. Literally bringing
Yeah.
back this legend of horror who directed the first film and wrote the music for the first film as well, and you're like
Mhm.
hardly using the music. That seems odd to me.
Yeah,
I
that is
I
weird.
noticed it as somebody who's only seen this one. Like I noticed it and thought it was pretty creepy. And I've obviously, maybe not obviously, but I've heard the music before. Like I recognized it
Yeah.
Mhm.
immediately as like, oh, that's like classic iconic horror movie music.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
But
I will say too, so with the original, it's like purely a slasher. It's
Yeah.
not really a mystery. Like they don't
yeah.
build up the storyline at all. It's literally just like this Michael person who's seriously messed up and he's killing women and like I that's that's just like not my kind of content, but like I can
Mm.
see how especially like people like our parents' age, like seeing that for the first time was probably really scary because stuff like that didn't
Mm.
happen back in the 70s and early 80s, or at least you didn't hear about it.
Well, it
And
did, and
so,
it was scary, right? That's like when Ted Bundy was big and like other big serial killers. Like it probably
Mm.
was kind of scary for them back then.
yeah. So I think just like the amount of content that's out there, having seen like a whole bunch of other scary stuff recently and then watching that, I was just kind of like, oh, like it's I don't know. It's not the same, but I can see how it's
Yeah.
like I can see how it's become this like cult classic because of who's in it, and like Michael Myers has just become this icon that
Mm.
everybody recognizes and the music and all that stuff.
I think it's also like the mask design is really
Yeah.
interesting. Like this, I mean, the first film was kind of really cheap as well, like really
Mhm.
low budget stuff. They, the makeup, the special effects dudes like found or just I don't know, went to the Star Trek set and just got a Captain Kirk mask and like painted it white, dyed the hair brown, and that was it. And it's just kind of like this, this emotionless face. It's
Mhm.
got kind of a weird expression on its face, and that's always kind of scary, I guess. Certainly in both of these, I think the mask work in this film is actually really good. I like how it's like really aged as well. Over You can
Mhm.
Mhm.
tell it's been aged over 4 years, which is good because if you watch a lot of the other films, I haven't seen all of them, but I've seen some. But like some of the masks, like in H2O, it's dreadful. It's really bad. So they get that
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, this one, so Christopher Nelson is the makeup visual effects guy on the
Mm,
movie, and they did a life cast of Michael Myers' face to make the
mm.
mask for this one,
All right.
which is
Oh.
like where you do the whole like mold of your face thing.
Did they get William Shatner for that, or was
I don't know.
it?
That's all the information I know, to be honest.
Okay.
So, Martin, you just brought up the budget for the original. It was
Yeah.
severely low budget. It was a
Yeah.
$300,000 budgeted film, and half
Wow.
of the budget
Mm.
went to purchasing the camera that they used to film
Half?
it. Yes. It was crazy low budget.
Because
Um
it was quite revolutionary at the time. Like, because I'm guessing you're saying, Liz, that they spent a lot of money on the Steadicam stuff.
mhm,
Because certainly the POV shots in that opening scene, that was pretty iconic and not widely seen
mhm,
in a horror movie in particular at that time. So literally just using the camera as Michael Myers' eyes as a 6-year-old
mhm.
in that opening scene, like that was pretty new.
Yeah, I thought that scene talking about the original, not the
Yeah.
2018 version, but in the original and you see like the little boy hand like come in and it looks so silly now, but I'm sure
Yeah.
at the time it was like, "Oh my gosh, like the somebody's arm," like it was probably really really cool at the time.
Yeah, I always find it odd in that film where he's literally the camera's like watching his own arm, like stabbing her sister.
Yeah.
Like, this is interesting.
Yeah.
That was weird, but yeah.
Okay. are y'all ready to get into talking about the 2018 version of this movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the annoying thing about this franchise as well. Now we have 3 films that are just called Halloween. I'm like, great. Couldn't if this film be called Halloween Returns? I think that was the working title for this film, so that's a little frustrating. So this film
Yeah.
will just be known as Halloween 2018, frankly.
They honestly could have just named it Michael Myers.
Well, I think Halloween Returns is a good name because it gives a sense of it being like the direct sequel to the original movie. Like it's weird
Yeah.
that it's called the same name because it, to your point, it makes you think it's a remake, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not.
So yeah, yeah.
It's like
Which
with
I'm glad it's
Scream.
not.
It's like with Scream when they brought out the new one. It's just called Scream. I'm like, why? When especially the latest one's called Scream 6. I'm like, well, can't you just change the title to Scream to make it cool?
I don't know.
Scream 5. It's annoying.
They're doing sequels to anything they can these days, and I feel like they're
Yeah.
trying to make them like modern for like the modern audiences, and I think that's why they're not naming them sequels because I think like somebody who hasn't watched the original Halloween might be more likely to watch this movie if they think it's like its own thing as opposed to being connected to like that older movie. Even though it
Yeah.
is, like it probably attracts a wider audience that way.
You definitely can too watch the 2018 movie without having seen the original and still understand what's going on. Like they do
100%.
enough backstory that it's not like you're not going to be confused.
Yeah, I agree. I do think you would probably get like a little bit more from this movie if you had seen the original. So like I haven't. So like there's moments where like when they first bring out the mask or when they first see Michael Myers in the beginning, like I feel like those moments would have been more impactful if you are somebody who had seen the original, and especially like Martin, like for you, like having seen it when you were so young, like I think it almost is like a nostalgia thing. It's like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
Like get to see these people, get to see Jamie Lee Curtis like in the same role, but like way older, like how neat. And like I didn't have that feeling while I was watching this. So I think that probably detracts from my viewing experience of it.
I mean, there's definitely some callbacks to the original one. Like there's a shot where Andy, I can't remember his second name, but Allison's character looks out the window and it's like Laurie, and in the original film it's Michael. And then like in the last scene, like they kind of swap role. The roles are kind of reversed
The
in the
hunter
last
becomes the
scene.
prey.
Yeah, where like Laurie is kind of hunting Michael, because they kind of like start the scene in the basement. Like Laurie like shoots through the floorboards, and it sounds like she's injured Michael. So then she goes up the stairs. Kind of a cool thing though, kind of cool like hidden basement. I quite like that. She
Yeah.
goes up the stairs and then she's kind of hunting Michael, and like in every room, like she sees if he's in there, and like these kind of garage type doors
She thought
come
of
down.
everything. She was
Yeah.
like, I am not going to get caught by this guy again.
Yeah.
That
And
scene was by far my favorite scene in the
oh
movie.
yeah.
Because I think it was the scariest
Oh
because
yeah,
like
yeah.
she's like walking around and like trying to figure out where he is, and you know he's in there somewhere, so like you know he's about to jump out, and like I don't know, something about that scene I was like, oh shit, like this movie wasn't, for me it wasn't scary until that point.
Yeah. Because then when like Laurie is approaching the wardrobe, you know, in the original film it was the other way around. You know, Laurie was hiding in the wardrobe,
Oh,
and then there's a
okay.
shot where like Michael throws Laurie out the window, and in the last movie, Dr. Loomis shoots Michael out the window as well, but they both kind of like disappear in both films, so that was kind of a cool nod to fans.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
the when you said from the beginning where she's sitting in class and looks out and her grandma's out there, like as soon as it happened, I was like, "Oh yeah, I know what this is."
Mm-hmm.
It was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's talk about the writing of the movie because we've kind of been dancing around it, but it has a really cool premise in that it is the sequel. And so Danny McBride was brought on to write. He worked with the director, David Gordon Green, and also he brought on Jeff Fradley. And So the premise that they built is that Jamie Lee Curtis's character Laurie has been like prepping ever since Michael Myers got caught, for like a kind of like acting like a doomsday prepper, and she sucked her own daughter into it and built this like elaborate like booby trapped house so that her and her family can like hide out underneath while they hunt down Michael. So um, I liked it, and I think Jamie Lee Curtis liked it so much that it convinced her to like actually return for this movie.
Yeah, I quite like that angle with, Jamie Lee Curtis is really suffering from trauma for 40 years. It's really
Mhm.
kind of on the edge of being very kind of crazy, and I kind of like those scenes where she's like really anxious going to like a family dinner with her granddaughter and her daughter, and the dad who was really annoying, but and she like drinks
Yes.
the wine,
She's
and
just chugging wine.
yeah, it was kind of very awkward, that scene.
It was awkward. It was very cringy. I was like, "Oh god, that did not need to happen."
Yeah, so I kind of really related to that. I kind of like that aspect of her character, um, and there's definitely a lot of like Sarah Connor Terminator 2 vibes going on here, with a lot of like the
Mhm.
shotgun training and
Yeah.
stuff with all the mannequins. Uh, yeah, so I don't know whether it's going a bit too far for me with like the whole trauma stuff of, you know,
Yeah.
um, like as you say, Courtney, like completely booby trapping her house and literally waiting for Michael Myers to return, and completely alienating her family. So I don't know if they take it a little bit too far there, but I like the idea. It's something
I
very
thought,
new that the franchise hasn't really tackled before.
yeah, I thought I really appreciated that they wrote in Laurie's character to be like the same kind of like oddball outcast girl she was in the original. And I mean, it's being portrayed by the same actress. So, I mean, that's part of it as well. But they did a good job like writing in her being like awkward. It's not like she like grew up and became like a normal person because she wasn't normal in the
Mhm.
original one. So I think it like all kind of like fits and goes together.
Yeah, I think I feel like sometimes you can sense that like David Gordon Green isn't the best horror director in the world when like Laurie comes into her daughter's house, like testing whether it's safe or not. She comes around and like, bang, you're dead. I'm like, what? I'm not sure. It was a little
Yeah.
funny to me. I was like, okay.
Yeah, and like
um,
Danny McBride is like a comedy writer too. So
yeah.
I wonder if like aspects of that hurt this
It
also.
yeah, it definitely
Yeah.
I'm like, you've got two cops. There's a scene where there's two cops talking about like sandwiches. I'm like,
That was actually really funny, I
okay,
thought.
why are
And
we
he brought him
here?
like a peanut butter and jelly banh mi sandwich.
Yeah,
Very random addition to the script
it
for
just
sure.
it definitely just cuts the tension and suspense in the film. You're like, I was not expecting this. And then like with the dad, when he says, "Oh, I got peanut butter on my penis," it's just like, what?
Yeah,
I wasn't
what was
expecting to
that?
hear that type of line in a Halloween
I
film. But
I rewinded the movie because I was
Like, what did
watching
I
it and I was
miss?
like, "Wait, whoa, how did that happen?" And then I was like, "Oh, yep, just randomly line dropped. Okay, guess that's how this movie's gonna go."
and also as well with like Allison's character, like I feel like the focus was a little bit lost on Laurie, because like this is what kind of fans were very excited about, was like the return of Laurie Strode, and I feel like,
Mhm.
you know, I really like Andy. What's her second name? I can't.
Matichak.
Madajek.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I thought she was great, but like I feel like she goes through way more trauma than Laurie does in the first film. One,
Yeah.
like obviously she is locked in the back of that cop car with Michael Myers, and he's like right there unconscious. Oh my god, that must be absolutely terrifying. And then
That was
obviously has the
wild.
whole ordeal with Michael at the end. Also, like at the party, she sees her boyfriend kiss another girl, so she's bummed with that. And then the third wheeler tries to kiss her as well. It's just like, wow, that's a lot to deal with. I just feel like if they reboot this film again, Allison will be like, I don't know, Sarah Connor times 2 in 40 years.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised in general just to see so much storyline, honestly, in this
Yeah.
movie. Like, it was good to have it, but I feel like this movie is just known as being like a slasher with like Scream Queens. And like, that's sort of what
Mm.
I was expecting going in. So to get so much backstory about the family, like, I think it was nice to tie it to the first movie because it probably made it like not just like a direct like remake feeling,
Yeah.
but it was a really interesting choice for it being a thriller, like horror movie. Because I feel like for me, it made it less scary.
Right.
Yeah. And if you've read my letterboxd review of the original, you know this already, but that was like the main thing I didn't like about the original is that there was no backstory. There was like no
Okay.
Mm.
storyline at all. It's literally just like this wacko kid kills his
Yeah.
sister. They lock him up. All of a sudden, he's this all evil man, and he's like out to kill these random women for whatever
Schoolgirl.
reason he selected these. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And so I liked that about this one, the 2018 version, that it had the storyline and it like helps you understand like a little bit more about what's going on. They still don't really explain
Mm.
Michael Myers and why he's crazy, and he's like a juggernaut. Like they shoot him
Mm.
and he doesn't go down. He gets stabbed like 50
Yeah.
times. Like
Yeah.
I have no idea what's
Yeah.
up with that.
I think that's
There's
supposed to be like mysterious though in the movie. Like I think it's but
mm.
that's the element of not knowing that is supposed to freak you out because you're like sitting there like what the heck is this dude? Like why
Mhm.
everyone keeps calling him an animal and like the psychiatrist guy's so interested in him. Like
He's
I'm
obsessed.
terrified. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what the Halloween franchise has always kind of explored, and that's kind of like what the big appeal is for these films. Certainly for me, it's just like this exploration of what like evil actually is. Like
Mhm.
hmm
you kind of get that from the Doctor, but he's certainly no Donald Pleasance in the first film. Like Donald Pleasance really brings that kind of element to the fold in the original film like really well for me.
Mhm.
You don't quite get that really in this, but I kind of like how they're still keeping like the supernatural element here, but it's all kind of subtle. So I do like the mystery that there is kind of a supernatural element that he could be evil, or is it just like a mental health thing, or
Mhm.
it's always left very open, and I do kind of like the fact that it's not really answered. They definitely go
Yeah.
into it a little bit more, and in Halloween Kills, and unfortunately with Halloween Ends, it's dreadful. But but certainly, I think there's only like one line in this one where he's like, "Oh, I from the Doctor," where he's like, "Oh, I listened to Michael's chest and I heard nothing." In the very early scenes, he says that. Um, yeah, so I always find that's really
Oh, that's
interesting
weird.
about like how they explore the definition of what evil actually is, because
Mhm.
um, but then like going back to like the original sequels, like the storyline with that is that in Halloween 2, Laurie Strode was Michael Myers' sister. So,
hmm
but they completely drop that, but they don't particularly do anything different either in this one. So it's just like, so what's the point in like not making Michael Myers, uh, and Laurie brother and sister? So
Mhm.
they're not really doing anything particularly
Yeah,
special
it
there.
wouldn't have
So like,
changed anything if they had kept that in there, to be
yeah,
honest.
because the motivation seems to be the same. Like Michael is still going after Laurie, but like they're just not siblings anymore. So,
Mhm.
Yeah.
so what's the
I
motivation here? So
What I got
yeah.
from that whole interaction where she was telling her friends like, "Oh, like that's just something somebody made up." I kind of assumed that her mom was like embarrassed, and that's like just what her mom told her, and like didn't want the world to know that they were associated with that, I guess. I don't know. There was a lot
Right.
that they did in this film to try and show like the divide between Lori and her daughter Karen. Like, I feel like that was just like another part of
Mm.
it. Like, they never really explain, like, is she the sister? Is she not? Like,
Yeah.
it could have just been like the family trying to say, like, no, like, we're not
Mm.
actually related, even though they might be, because people do weird things.
Yeah. So the story opens with two journalists, or they're actually podcasters, and they visit the mental hospital where Michael Myers is, I guess, kept or housed. Which this place looked so weird. It was actually shot in
Mm.
a military academy. And then this is where we get introduced to Michael Myers. And he's actually played by the original guy who portrayed Michael Myers in the 78 film, Nick Castle. And then he also is portrayed by a stunt double throughout the film named James Jude Courtney.
Yeah, I hated those characters.
Yeah.
I think what's kind of fun about these films is the fact that it's kind of fun watching Michael Myers kill stupid characters.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They were kind of stupid characters. I didn't really understand
Yeah.
the point of them, I guess, other than just to introduce him and like the history of him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think their whole shtick was they're like trying to like prove that these like people who've been incarcerated for a long time maybe like didn't do anything, or that they like didn't deserve to be incarcerated or whatever.
Hmm.
And then for them to be like killed by him just like is it's poetic.
Okay.
Yeah, I quite, I quite enjoyed like the opening scene. It kind of creates some really great um atmosphere. I think when Aaron Corey like takes out the mask, and when
Hmm.
you see it for the first time, and like Michael doesn't really move, or he kind of like moves his head slightly, like he can feel the presence of the mask again. That was kind of cool. But so it kind of builds and builds and builds, but then it just cuts to the credits. So I was like, oh, okay. There's no like dramatic satisfying moment. It's like, oh, it's the credits now. I'm like, oh, okay, that's why.
Yeah. Yeah, they
Yeah.
waited until after the credits. We didn't get the first real like horror element of this film for like a while.
Mm,
Like, you're like quite a bit into it before he kills anyone, before you realize that he's like out. Like, yeah, you go a long time.
yeah. I mean, certainly those first scenes where the podcasters do get killed, I quite like that at the petrol station where I think you see Aaron like filling up the car, and you can see like Michael in his white clothes like walk in the background, and it's all kind of blurry still, so that was quite cool. And then
Hmm.
when uh Dana is like asking for the loo, where she's like, do you know where the loo is, or bathroom? I'm like, oh god, we don't talk like that. Not everyone talks like that. I mean, come on. And then you can see like Michael Myers like beating on someone in the background. It's kind of quite small,
Hmm.
but you can see it, which I quite liked. But then the teeth thing was weird. So I was like,
Yeah.
why is it his teeth? Did he pull someone else's teeth out? I mean, if it is his teeth, I'm like, part of me was like, I felt a bit sorry for him because clearly in that hospital they have really poor dental care. So he was like, I'm fed up with his teeth now. I'm just gonna use it for intimidation instead. Yeah, that was a bit strange. And also kind of the fight I really didn't like, because I feel like in Halloween films you're not really supposed to see his face, and you could see Nick
Mhm.
Castle's face a lot. I was like, no, stop
Oh,
it.
okay. Yeah.
It's kind of supposed to be from his point of view. Like, you're
Yeah,
watching, like you are him while he's killing someone.
yeah.
They don't do that at all in the new movie. At least I don't remember if they did.
So it's interesting whether they're trying to contextualize why Michael Myers doesn't talk because he hasn't got any teeth. So
I definitely didn't pick up on that.
Can
I
you
just thought
imagine
he
that
was a
though?
weird dude.
Sorry, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, one thing I will say about that scene though that it established with this movie is that like this is like it is a slasher film, because at that point I was like, oh, they just like spent like a decent amount of time like telling you who these podcasters were and like what they're doing, and then they're just dead.
Yeah.
Okay, goodbye. So that
Yeah.
kind of introduced to me like, okay, like they're going to introduce other characters that are just going to die, and that's exactly what happened.
I was pleased they died though. I was like, yay, you were annoying. Bye bye.
Yeah, it didn't like take from the movie that they weren't
No.
involved.
No, I agree. I didn't think they were like exceptional actors or characters. So, nope. So, we're going to talk about a couple other people that were cast in the movie. So, Judy Greer was cast as Jamie Lee Curtis's daughter in the movie.
I thought she was perfect. I love
Yeah.
Judy Greer.
I thought she was a little bit
Really?
underutilized too, because I think she's pretty good.
She
And I
can
don't,
do more than that role.
yeah.
I did feel sorry for her at times because sometimes she has some really bad dialogue to.
Yeah, I agree. I was like,
When
I've seen her in so much
yeah.
other stuff where she's really good, and I just think in this movie she like didn't have the opportunity to really like showcase that.
Yeah, I mean, in the scene where I mentioned before, where like Laurie is testing out how unsafe their house is, and she basically kicks Laurie out, I think, and she's like, "No, not everyone's life is full of darkness and stuff. Life can be full of light and love." I'm like,
Oh my
Mm-hmm.
do
God, shut up.
people speak like that in America? I don't think so.
No. No. No, we don't.
Definitely not.
No.
Yeah, the only point in the movie, or the best part for her that really like showcased Judy Greer, and it was a shame that it took this long, but it was the final scene
Oh yeah.
where she
Yeah.
shoots him and she does the acting ahead of time where
Yeah, that was
she's like
good.
faking it.
Mm,
Gosh, I was like, that is why they cast her. Like
Yeah.
that scene is the reason that they cast Judy Greer, because
yeah.
that was perfect, perfectly
Mm.
executed.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and
I
the daughter's
agree.
like,
Yeah.
"What's happening?"
So her daughter is played by Andy Matichak, and it's her big screen debut, similar to the original Halloween movie being Jamie Lee Curtis's big screen debut.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But one thing I think is interesting is that was a very conscious choice,
Yeah.
because there were a lot of people who were interested in that role. So both Emma Roberts and Lucy Hale actually contacted Danny McBride about being that part, but he wanted to go with somebody who was unknown.
Mhm.
Yeah, I thought she was great, to be honest.
Yeah.
She has a lot more stuff to do, especially in Halloween Ends. It's just such a shame that film isn't great, but she's fantastic in that film. The one really great positive about Halloween Ends. It's just, yeah. I don't know. What do you guys feel about like all the high school stuff and the Halloween party? Like, it did feel a little out of place
I thought it
to
was
me.
hard to follow. And so
Yeah.
because of that, I felt like it was out of place. I think they could have done it in like a little bit of a different way that made it more easy to kind of comprehend the story, like maybe like dumb it down a little bit, because I think they had like too many high school kids that had storylines that you only got bits of, and then it was making them kind of like overlap, and I was confused. And then like I thought I liked the boyfriend, and then I hated the boyfriend, and I was
Yep.
like, why am I worried about the boyfriend? Like he's the least of my worries, to be honest.
Yeah, I didn't think the high school storyline was hard to follow. I just thought it was unnecessary. I
Yeah.
think it was kind of a distraction. Like I think it was almost meant to like make you put your guard down. You're like, "Oh, okay, we're just like looking at these kids or whatever." And then
Mm-hmm.
you'd see Michael Myers like somewhere in the next scene or whatever. I think it was just kind of meant to be like fluff in the movie so that you're not expecting like what's coming next.
Mm.
Yeah, but I hate that, right? Like having to put fluff in a movie. Like
I
this
liked
this
it.
movie this movie shouldn't need fluff. Like it should need the parts of the storyline to add that trauma. And then
I think it's just like directing choice, like writing and directing choice, like stylistically. That's how they wanted to
yeah.
do it. That's what it was meant for. It
Yep.
worked for some people, doesn't for others.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can't.
agreed.
I quite liked. Was it Corey, the third wheel guy? He was quite
Yeah.
funny. Just the drunk kid just trying to kiss Allison. That I was like, dude, what are you doing?
Like, stop.
But
You're ruining everything.
I liked his death though, and that was kind of like one of the best kills for me, where like
Yeah.
Michael is just kind of in the bushes, and it takes you a minute to actually
Mhm.
spot him. You're like, oh shit, he's in the bushes.
Yeah.
And it was quite
Yeah.
clever with like how, and really simple as well, with the floodlights coming on and off. That was really cool and pretty
I did
gnarly as
like
well.
that. Yeah.
When you see his chin on top of the railing, I was like, ooh, that's nasty.
That felt like a very like Michael Myers kill. Like that's
Oh yeah.
how that like it was portrayed in the original. Like you would just kind of see the dead person. Like you knew it was happening, but then they would just be dead.
Yeah. But one thing that kind of really bothered me though about that character was when he says, I know the guy's drunk, but when he says girls with really sexy girls were like feeding me guacamole, I'm like, and you left the party? What are you
Yeah.
doing? I mean, come on.
It was
Feed me
really
all the
weird to get
guacamole.
all those like silly little bits throughout the movie
Yeah.
because they were like pretty well written funny parts and they just like
Yeah.
really stood out because
Mhm.
they contrasted so much with everything else that was going on.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I did love Michael in the bushes because it kind of like highlighted like the white of the mask a lot. It
Mm-hmm.
definitely gave it a very great creepy feel there.
Okay, so
Mhm.
let's talk about the effects and the cinematography then.
Mhm.
So this movie was filmed in Charleston and it was shot in about 25-30 days, and they obviously had to like shoot it mostly at night. Michael Simmons was the cinematographer on this one. He tried to keep it like true to the original. He shot in anamorphic several times, and he also used like violence and scares that played out in wider shots with minimal edits, to kind of keep to that like slasher feel. But
This was though the first Halloween, like the first movie in the Halloween franchise to be shot digitally,
yeah,
which is why
cool.
it looks so different from the rest of them.
Yeah, if you listen to my podcast regularly, you'll know I'm kind of a big fan of films shot on film because it
Mhm.
just looks
Mm-hmm.
really nice and beautiful. Whereas
Yeah.
I
digital stuff
agree.
can feel a bit stale, but I still think the cinematography in this was pretty cool actually.
Mhm.
Um I do question some of like the Warner shots here, like one of the first like kills that Michael does where he's like walking down the street. I know a lot of people, a lot of like Halloween fans kind of like this, but for me, I'm not sure it was completely necessary with the fact that you know Michael Myers is just like walking into houses and killing people. That's a lot. That's a lot of what Halloween fans want. But for me, like I just felt like the tension and the atmosphere wasn't earned for those shots, and I didn't really feel it with that.
Mhm.
Because he just goes into one house, picks up a hammer, kills a woman, like comes out, and then sees someone in a window. He kind of like walks all the way around. The camera kind of stays on the window. You see his shadow
Mm-hmm.
through the house, comes through, stabs the girl through the neck, and I was like, "Whoa, that's pretty interesting," but it didn't really fill me with a lot of suspense. It's a really cool shot and all.
Mhm.
Technically, it's really
Yeah.
great, but like this is supposed to be a horror film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I agree. Like I think that made it less scary for sure.
Yeah,
Cuz like I said, I wasn't really scared throughout this movie until like kind of the very
yeah,
end.
Yeah,
mm,
I think what makes Michael Myers like as a character so scary, at least from I've only seen these two films, the original and then this one.
mm,
What made him so scary in the original is that he like it was like a stalk and then kill. It wasn't
yeah,
like he was just killing people to kill them. He like was very clearly targeting these 3 girls
Yeah.
Mhm.
and then took his time like scaring them and killing them and then dressing them up and like placing them about, and
Yeah.
you don't really get any of that in this movie.
Putting his wall art up on the wall, you
Mhm.
know.
Yep.
Yeah. Getting back to like the way it was shot, like, and you mentioned the mask and the bushes and stuff.
Yeah.
So I listened to a podcast, the Go Creative show, and they had Michael Simmons on it, and he was talking about how the mask was actually like a bit like a challenge for him because it's white, you can't put light like directly on the front. You have to use like either
Right.
backlighting or side lighting. And so I
Mm.
think it's cool that that shot you really enjoyed, because that was probably a challenging one from
Oh,
a like
yeah.
a
Yeah.
filming perspective, especially at night too.
Mhm. So we talked about it being filmed digitally, and Courtney and I have talked about this before. I can't remember if it's been in one of our episodes or just like us talking, but
Hmm.
sometimes when it's shot digitally, it makes it look fake
Yeah.
because it's like
Mhm.
almost too crisp and too clean and too clear. And that
Right.
takes you out of whatever's going on in the movie. And I don't know what they did with the digital production here, but I didn't get that feeling at all. Like I almost didn't
Mm.
know that it was shot digitally. Like they did a good job keeping the eerie, like spooky older feel of
Mm.
it, but yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if it's because it was also dark and it was like shot at night.
I don't
That
know.
had something to do with it.
Yeah, it's always an advantage shooting digitally when you got a lot of night scenes. So, with like when you shoot film for for night scenes, like you got to have a lot of lights on to shoot that way. So,
Hmm. How did y'all feel about the slasher effects in the movie? Um, I thought they were good. At some points, I thought they were like a bit over the top. And one example I have is when Michael Myers steps on Dr. Sartain's head, and it just like like I don't even know. It's like a balloon, and it like
pumpkin. Yeah.
squashes. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think that was definitely a bit much. God, that was a weird choice with that doctor character. Um,
yeah.
when like I can understand him like killing like well trying to kill the sheriff because he wants to like study Michael, you know, keep him alive and stuff. But like it was a little dumb as well. The fact that he takes Michael into the back seat and like Allison's in the car as well, the cop car. Obviously the doors are locked, and then Allison is obviously terrified and. But I'm like, surely Michael Myers is definitely going to wake up soon, and he just kills the doctor and not Allison. I'm like, Allison's like right there.
Yeah,
So that was a bit
he had to go
frustrating.
out of his way to not kill her in that moment.
Yeah,
I feel like, especially knowing him, like he could have just gone over and punched her face and it would have like squashed like a pumpkin, and he didn't do
yeah,
that. And so that felt pretty unrealistic. And like just the fact that she like couldn't get out of the back, and she like she didn't even look like she tried the car door. Like I was like,
yeah,
girl, like do something different here.
yeah. But also, like, the biggest sin this film makes is the fact that the doctor puts on the mask. I'm like, whoa, what
Yeah,
the fuck?
what was that?
That was, and then he just takes it off when he puts Michael back in the car and like leaves the mask but right by him.
Yeah, I feel like they
So
were trying to build him as like a creepy character too, and I just don't think that they did a good enough job with that, because they didn't like give you any sort of backstory to
mm,
think that he was going to do something like that. So then when he like switched and became really creepy,
mm.
I don't know, I didn't really buy it.
It was kind of very like thrown away as well. Like as soon as it's revealed that he's kind of quite a bad character, evil character, like he gets killed pretty quickly. And
Yeah.
especially when you put in quite a dramatic moment where he's actually putting on the mask. I mean, did they just do that to piss off fans? I don't know, but it
Mhm.
just did not work really. And then to just kill him straight away, Not cool, people. Not cool.
I think for me, him like killing the cop and putting the mask on kind of made his behaviors make sense.
Okay.
And also like his behaviors from the beginning of the movie, him like being
Right.
like having to be with Michael Myers, like I have to ride with him as he's being
Yeah.
Yeah.
transported. And then like Michael Myers just like somehow gets out of his restraints and is able to like overtake all the police officers on, like he's had some help. So like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
doctor maybe has let him out. And then also the doctor like putting the mask on, I think was their attempt at setting up for sequels of having like Michael Myers
Yes.
like copycats, like people who are like assuming his
Oh.
role like moving forward with movies, cuz originally they were going to
Mm.
have two that came after 2018. So, I don't think that there's anything in production or they have any plans for that, but I think that was kind of them like setting up the stage for like, hey, people are intrigued by this guy, and like potentially copycats could be a thing. Cuz the
I
doctor
think two
even
movies
says
did.
like, is this what it feels like for you to like kill someone? Like,
Yeah, I think that's kind of the only real reason why he puts the mask on. It's just he kind of wants to experience maybe what it's like to put the mask on, and if he can get into like this evil serial killer type mentality,
mhm.
kind of, but it doesn't really work for me. It just
Lit. So
looks stupid.
they did make those two movies. That's Halloween Kills and Halloween
Yeah.
Ends. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but they didn't kill him then at the end of this movie when they blew up the house?
I don't think so.
No, they don't.
That's insane.
I mean, they never
Yeah.
show him being
No.
killed. Like
In
they
none
just
of the
show,
movies, they never show him dying.
and he never dies. So
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
the mistake Laurie makes at the end of this film is she doesn't
She doesn't
call the
confirm.
watch him
fire brigade.
die.
She doesn't call the fire brigade and say, "Don't come to my house."
Oh,
So,
okay.
Yikes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I
Yeah.
actually quite like Halloween Kills. There's some really interesting ideas there with like mob mentality and what it does to a community. Yeah, and then it's kind of frustrating because like that film is very open ended with what you have in a lot of like second films in a trilogy, and it kind of makes you have to watch Halloween Ends as well, unfortunately. But yeah, I quite like Kills actually.
Cool.
Yeah, they've got to get creative with them at this point, right? Because that'll be like
Mm,
the 12th and 13th movie in the franchise. So
yeah, I mean, in Kills, he kills a lot of people in that one.
yeah.
I mean, a lot of people.
Okay, so I want to go through some notable scenes of the movie. We've talked about some of them, so we'll probably skip over those. But one we haven't talked about a ton is kind of towards the beginning when the bus that's transporting all the patients, including Michael Myers, crashes, and you get like a father son duo who come upon the scene and try to kind of figure out what's going on. And there's all these like patients just like walking
Mhm.
around, like
That's a callback to
just.
the original.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I definitely really enjoyed that actually. You definitely got that kind of similar spooky vibe from the original, with the headlights and all the patients in their white
Randomly being
gowns.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just like randomly on the road, going in any direction. I
Mhm.
quite enjoyed that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this movie does like what I've seen in a lot of the scary movies that I've been watching recently, which is like they overcompensate with like some sort of emotional conversation with a character before they kill him off. So like
Mm.
right before this scene, the father son duo, they have this conversation where like the son and the dad are talking about like he really wants to be like a dancer, but he also
Oh
wants to
yeah.
go like hunting. And I was like, what is like what is the point of this conversation? Like
Yeah.
it's so kind of out there and
Oh,
like
what's the
random.
musical Billy Elliot?
Billy
I was just
Elliot.
like,
Yeah, I
was
love
there a
that
Billy
one.
Elliot reference here or something?
Yeah, yeah. And I think they're trying to build like very quickly like, oh, this is like a really like wholesome like sweet like country
Yeah.
family. Like the dad, even though he probably really wants his kid to be like a hunter, is like supportive of him dancing and like they're having a conversation about it. And then
Yeah.
like boom, this like crazy scene happens where he dies.
Aye.
Yeah. So we talked about Michael killing the podcasters at the truck stop. And then we also get a scene where he kills a babysitter who is Vicky, and she's babysitting the kid Julian.
Yeah.
Which that
I
scene
mean,
was
that's a
kind of
direct callback from the original because everyone that he kills in the original, they're all babysitters.
oh cool.
Yeah.
They're
I quite
babysitting on
enjoyed that
Halloween.
scene. Yeah, I quite
Yeah.
enjoyed that scene. That was pretty cool. I like the way like she's kind of playing with the kids, like when she goes in, when the kids like, "There's the boogeyman in my room," and then she goes
She's
into
like,
the room.
"Hey,
And it's like,
you, get out of there."
yeah, fake doing a fake out, and then Michael's in the wardrobe. But again, I feel like that could have been directed a little bit better. It didn't particularly feel that scary. It was only kind of highlighted with music.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I agree. I enjoyed it like a lot. Like I thought it was really funny and I thought the little kid was really funny, but I also didn't think it was very scary.
yeah. Let Dave go first.
Yeah.
Yeah, let Dave
That's
go
funny.
first. Send him in.
Yeah.
It's the moral of the
Aw.
story. Always send Dave in first.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we get like the Halloween night sequence. We've talked about some of it. And this is when Allison is walking home with Oscar. Oscar's killed by Michael. And that scene was, we talked about that scene because that was where we had like the flashing lights in the backyard. I thought that
Yeah.
was pretty good. Um, but this is where Allison like has to kind of start running from Michael.
And they just happen to be like close by where her grandmother's like farm compound house is. And she
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
stumbles upon the like training grounds. But like, how has she never been to her grandmother's house? Like, how does she not realize how close they are? And also, how
Mm.
does she not know like where she is when she stumbles upon the training grounds? Like, that whole thing was like very confusing to me.
I thought
Yeah,
that
it
was
was kind
confusing
of odd as
also.
well when she like stops in the middle of all these mannequins and like screams in fear. I'm like, oh, okay,
Like, you're
they're
gonna
only
draw him to you.
mannequins.
What are you doing? Like, come
Yeah,
on.
Yeah.
but I kind of like the idea like David Gordon Green was going for with these mannequins because like Michael Myers is kind of known as the Shape.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
he's credited as the Shape.
yeah, so I kind of like that final scene as well where like Laurie is stalking, well, she's trying to look for Michael, and you have a lot of these mannequins around, and I feel like they were kind of going for that kind of type of vibe of sort of matching up what Michael kind of looks like and the way he moves in the
Mm-hmm.
kind of shape of a mannequin. I kind of got that connotation, but again, I feel like David Gordon Green is showing his inexperience with not making a horror film before. I kind of like the idea, but it definitely wasn't executed as well as it could have been, especially when with like Allison running into that training yard. It is a little funny to me. It wasn't that scary. Yeah.
I thought it was
Uh,
confusing more than anything, Liz, to your point. Like I thought it was
mm,
like I couldn't really follow it very well. Like how'd she get there? Like
yeah.
I didn't really even understand exactly that was Laurie's training ground. Like I guess that makes sense now after like thinking back on the movie, but definitely confusing. But I did think that the mannequins were very effective actually in Laurie's house when she was
Yeah.
searching for Michael. I thought they were super scary in that part. So they were a good concept. It's just, Martin, to your point, like that's a good example of like when they're used effectively versus like they're not really directed or used effectively in the wood
Mm.
scene. Like they had a lot of potential, but just like didn't kind of come to fruition there.
Yeah, because I think David Gordon Green is certainly comes from a comedy background with
Mm-hmm.
was it Your Highness and Pineapple Express.
Pineapple Express, yeah.
Yeah, and you would think like he would be pretty good at horror, but because like comedy and horror, the way you direct those scenes, you're kind of getting a very similar response, but just like with
Yeah.
slightly tweaks, you either get a scare or you get a laugh. So that's why like people like Jordan Peele is amazing, because he did a lot of sketch shows in the past and then goes into horror and like makes some of the best horror films ever. Yes, he's doing it kind of through the Black experience with that, but I I haven't seen Your Highness or Pineapple Express, but I don't think they're that great. I don't think, reading on those films with what the critics said. So I was just like, well, if you can't do great comedy, then maybe you can't do great horror either. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so in the
But
podcast I listened to with Michael Simmons, the cinematographer, like one thing he said is that yes, there are a lot of similarities between comedy and horror, but
mm,
he's he said in his opinion that horror is the most challenging
yeah,
because sometimes you do film something and you don't really get a reaction at all because like say for example like you're shooting a scene and the scary thing in it is that like something in the background like slightly shifts. So like you could think of that as like a viewer of a horror movie, like you see it and you're like, oh, holy shit, like that moved, like what the hell? But like if you're filming that, like I can't imagine like something like that would be scary at all in the moment. So
yeah.
you're having to be really creative about how you film things to get the right
Mm.
effect when it goes into production.
I mean, I quite enjoyed how like Michael comes out behind the mannequins. I didn't feel like
Mm-hmm.
I knew where he was in that scene, so I think
Yeah.
that scene in particular I thought was quite good. But I kind of find it interesting. I think they kind of solve a story problem with costumes in this film, because Alison and
What
her
do you mean?
boyfriend, dress up as Bonnie and Clyde, but they swap uh, gender roles. So
uh,
Alison is the male character, Clyde. So I was just like, and I feel like they did that for a very practical reason, because I think it would be kind of weird and stupid if she kind of if they chose a different character, like, I know she comes in like a witch dressed up as a black cat or a devil or something. Of like,
yeah.
Alison, what are you wearing? When she comes to meet her mother and grandmother, tonally, I don't think that would have fitted very well.
Yeah. So let's talk about the final sequence just in general because we've been touching on little bits of it.
Yeah.
But we basically end up with all three of the girls in the family in the house together, and they're being hunted by Michael Myers, who's like lurking on the outside. And then at some point he comes in, and Laurie's hunting him down in the house. And finally, Allison joins, and um, we get Allison and her mom like hiding out in the basement while Laurie's hunting Michael upstairs. And it's a very action packed scene. A lot happens. You get some really cool moments. Like I mentioned, my favorite is when Laurie is like looking through the house for Michael. I think that scene is really scary. Um, and then we get some really cool moments, like we mentioned with Judy Greer, like finally getting to kind of reveal that she is kind of a badass and got all this cool training while she was growing up.
Yeah, I feel it was kind of really interesting, those final moments.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it was a little short. I feel like they could have maybe added something extra in there when, like, you have all three of the characters there. It was a really great reveal with Judy Greer and Jamie Lee Curtis, with Greer with the gun, and that was kind of really cool. But they kind of just keep it in the basement, really, of they get Michael down there, and then it's just a bit of a tug of war match with Allison's leg, or was it Greer's leg? I can't remember, but yeah, that was kind of it. And then
Yeah, I think
they burn it
Allison's leg.
down. But yeah, bit of a tug of war. But I would have wanted a little bit more dynamism and creativity, maybe, with that fight in particular. But
It was Karen's leg because Allison stabs him and then carries the knife around.
yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, good call. Yeah, because Karen like tells Allison to go up and then follows behind her. Yeah, that totally makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Like a true mother would.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that scene. I liked all like the things that would happen in the house, like when she like pulled that crank and like
Yeah.
the basement closed up and locked
Mhm.
Myers like down there, and then she like flamed the whole house with like you saw like sequentially like
Yeah.
each room like
Mhm.
the gas go and then her
Yeah.
like light it up, and I thought that was really cool.
Wouldn't it have been
Um,
cool though if like Michael got caught in those like spikes as the
yeah.
that would have been really gnarly. Like
They just
you
need to
know, it
chop his
just
head
gets
off. Like, I don't know why they're like, "Oh, fire will kill him."
yeah.
I mean, that makes sense to me. I would like that's kind of like every like for example like vampire movies, like everything you see there, like the
Yeah.
only sure way to kill somebody is to burn them. So like that's probably where my head would go. So
Yeah, they
don't
just
totally
needed
blame
to
them.
fill the
Confirm.
house with axes and chainsaws. Maybe that's what Allison will do in 40 years, I guess.
I when I was watching that final sequence, like I just kept thinking like after they lock him down there and then the fire starts and you start seeing everything like deteriorating, I was just thinking like the walls are going to come down and he's going to get out.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah, and then they never show
Mhm.
him
but
die. And you see down in the basement and it's just like an
Yeah.
empty window or empty door and he's not there. So you know like he's coming back.
Yeah, it does end very abruptly as well. I think I kind of had a little problem with that when they're on the back of like this truck, like driving away, and it's just like Halloween, and I'm like, oh, okay,
Mhm.
is that it? I would have thought you would have had bit more of a resolution at the end of this film,
Mhm.
um, than it just cutting straight away like that. But yeah, I like the idea of the spikes going across, like the basement door. But yeah, I feel like he could have got out because like the house is burning down. Like,
Yeah.
you gonna get
Yeah.
out?
It's wood.
And unfortunately,
Yeah,
he
it's
probably
um,
wood.
does.
what is really interesting about the end of this movie is it's so action packed and to me it feels like it was the scary part of the movie. Like there's
Mhm.
suspense build, there's mystery, there's some violence, like that's like the scary point of the movie. And the final sequence is like what people are hating about this movie. Like on the internet, if you go read the reviews, people are like, it's literally supposed to be like a kill and leave. Like he's just supposed to kill and leave. Like why is this whole like situation where he's like obsessed with
Oh.
her or whatever.
Well, they were probably
But
unsatisfied with all the like slasher moments up to that point. Like they probably wanted some like really like suspenseful
Mm.
hardcore ones, which we didn't really get. So
mhm.
Yeah, they definitely saved those for Halloween Kills.
yeah. So I guess the moral of the story is watch the next movie. You'll
Yeah,
get
pretty
them.
much.
Yeah.
And then stop there.
Good to know. Uh, I'll have to hit up. You said Dustin was talking about how that one was crazy. We've had
Yeah.
him on recently, and I know he likes horror movies. So if he
Mm.
is saying don't watch it, and you're saying that, then probably I will not be watching it.
Yeah, it's the decisions.
Yeah.
And then he goes and makes Exorcist Believer, which is even worse in my opinion. Not good at all. I mean, when it comes up saying a 15, I'm like, really? This is an Exorcist film. How is this not 18? Anyway, but there we go.
Oh yeah, we don't have 15 here. We just have PG-13 or
Right?
R.
Yeah.
So this one's R. Um, okay. Is there anything else that y'all wanted to talk about Halloween 2018 before we move on to the ratings?
I don't
Mm,
think so.
no, I think a
Well,
lot of my notes are covered.
I will say this movie and the original were both released on Michael Myers'
Miker.
birthday.
Michael Myers. Yeah.
The 19th of October. So
Oh wow.
they're
Yeah.
released
Okay.
like exactly 40 years apart, but also on his birthday, which is kind of cool.
That's cool.
One other thing that's interesting about this movie that I forgot to bring up earlier is that when this movie came out, it became the highest grossing Halloween film just in its opening weekend. So it was actually like
Wow.
a really successful movie. The film grossed over $250 million worldwide, breaking like numerous box office records.
Mm.
And it had the second highest opening weekend in the month of October. And it's the highest grossing film of the franchise. So I think of all the Halloween movies that we could have chosen, this was probably the most successful, at least.
I
Yeah.
think it was the most anticipated.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
think when fans found out that John Carpenter was involved and they were bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis, like the excitement level was pretty hyped. So,
Yeah.
yeah, just other one moment that I remembered, which was pretty shocking. I was just like, wow, I can't believe he just did that. Was like Allison's boyfriend when Allison is like confronting the boyfriend and he like takes her phone and then drops it in that custard pudding thing. I was just like, whoa, that is a dick move, dude.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
He went from being like so sweet, like he was nice at her like family dinner, and then like he like took a complete turn and was just like
Yeah.
a major asshole. And I was like, whoa, like I remember boys being mean in high school, but like not that mean. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they were just showing him like being drunk and being stupid. And they had to get rid of her phone
Yeah.
some way because they weren't able to contact
Yeah.
her. So
Yeah,
he was
that's
the
true.
scapegoat.
Yeah. I
No,
don't know
you wouldn't
whether
forget after that she didn't have her phone. So
yeah, I don't
yeah.
know whether like Danny McBride was like into food-based comedy at the time. I don't know. It's like, yeah, let's put the
Going through
Allison's
a
phone in
phase.
the custard pudding thingy. That'll be funny.
Not like she
No,
couldn't
it's a dick
get it
move.
out. If somebody dropped my phone in there, I would just grab it out and be like, "Okay, it's fine." Like in
All right.
2018, phones could
Yeah.
withstand some water back then too. Like it's not like
Yeah.
that was like a new thing. So
Yeah, Allison was
maybe a plot hole.
like, my phone's gonna be fine, dude. Why did you do that?
Yeah. Okay, so let's rate this movie. And as a reminder, we rate our movies on Letterboxd. So it's a 0 to 5 star rating system with half-star increments. And Martin, we're going to let you rate
Right.
this movie first.
So I feel like this one is slightly the best one out of the three new ones. So
Okay.
I rated on Letterbox Halloween Ends as 2 stars, Halloween Kills as 3 stars. So I think I'll go for this one 3.5.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot of like really cool stuff for like Halloween horror fans in here. Like there are certainly some moments where David Gordon Green like really gets it really right, and it's really great to see. But I just feel like it really lacks atmosphere. I wanted more Laurie Strode because I think that is a really great idea that they were going for. So yeah, just not particularly very atmospheric, and just the comedy stuff was really unnecessary in my opinion. And
Yeah.
also when like the dad dies, the husband dies, like no one's that bothered. There's no reaction.
Not even me.
Like
I didn't care. I was like,
yeah.
yeah.
I was like, oh okay, he's clearly not that important to your family.
I
Okay.
do remember though they're like running out of the house and like nobody's concerned. Like they're like nobody mentions him, nobody thinks
Yeah.
about him. Like
Yeah. Poor guy got peanut butter on his penis and no one cares.
and then he was written off by the family.
So yeah, 3.5 for me. I think like for me, like the first film is a solid like 4.5, maybe even 5, and then so I can hear you're laughing. Yes.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so I think it's a very mixed bag for me. So 3.5.
Okay, fair. Liz, what about you?
So Martin, you must have been like so offended by my rating of the original Halloween movie.
Yeah.
So I watched these like one after the other. So I watched the original, and then the next night I
Right.
watched the 2018 version. I gave the original 1.5 stars. And I don't know why, but I just like don't feel like the value in like the older movies. Like I can see for some of them, but like just because it's like the old one or the original, I'm not like, oh my gosh, like it's this all amazing thing. And probably because I didn't grow up watching them, that's probably part of it.
Yeah,
But I watched the first one and I just thought it was like slow and like I just like
that's why
wasn't
it's
scared by
great.
it. Yeah. And so I also gave this 3.5 stars, but I don't think I would have
Okay,
rated it quite as high if I hadn't watched the original first.
right.
Like I
Okay.
don't think like standalone this movie is completely fantastic. Like I don't it's not like the best slasher movie I've seen. Um but watching it after the first, I was just like, wow, this one was so much better. Like they did such a better job on this one, in my opinion. So 3.5.
Courtney, do you do the editing on these podcasts? Oh,
I do.
all right. You might want to edit Liz's review there because you might have Halloween fans coming after you guys.
Yeah, maybe so.
Uh,
Oh no. Yeah, so I haven't seen the original Halloween, so nobody can come after me, but maybe they'll come after me because I haven't seen the original one.
all right.
But I that probably did take away from my enjoyment of this film because I didn't like appreciate the callbacks probably as much as I could have.
Mm.
I gave this movie a 2.5 out of 5 stars. And the main reason is because I didn't find it that scary. And
Yeah, that's fair.
I enjoy being scared. And like it really wasn't scary for me. I almost rated it 2 stars. But the scene that I love where Lori's like walking through her house trying to find Michael, like I thought that was really, really good. So that bumped up this movie a whole half a star. Hmm.
Cool.
Yep. Okay. Liz, do we have any write-ins for this one?
Yes. So I have 3 write-ins I wanted to share. Um 2 are negative and 1 is positive. So we'll start
Okay,
with the negative
interesting.
ones and we'll end on a high note.
I love
So
that.
the first one I have is actually from Dustin.
Cool.
We've mentioned him a couple times, but he said, "The beginning of the destruction of an icon. I stopped being a fan of greens after this trilogy." Very dramatic, but we
I
hear you,
Yeah.
Dustin.
Gotta eat his
yeah,
vegetables, man.
I yeah, that doesn't
um,
surprise me. I feel like I need to poll more people and see like how they think this one compared to the original because I
mhm.
feel like Martin, after hearing you say like the original is so much better, like I
Yeah.
bet that a lot of people probably feel that way.
I think the people who are like fans of the 70s and 80s horror movies are the ones that really appreciate this movie. And if that's like not your
Yeah.
style, those are the people that are probably like, it was okay.
Yeah,
So it just like
Mm.
depends
yeah.
on what you're looking for. The next one I have is from an account that it's not a name. It just says nico.sfc. Um,
Okay.
and it says, totally garbage. I think kill and ends are far better than the nostalgic exploitation that is 2018.
Kill and ends is better. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I think it's definitely worth watching Kills and Ends. Like, without giving anything away with Kills, with Ends, like they definitely go for some big swings and ideas here. But it's just not particularly well thought out, and like nothing makes sense. But I really appreciate like the ideas that they were going for, so it's worth watching for that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The last one I have, this is the positive one. It's from the Movie Buff Dublin. And they said, really good. Wish kills and ends were like it. So we
Okay.
got
Fair.
2
Real.
mentions of kills and ends.
Really like mixed bags there with the
Yeah.
movies.
I think in
Mm,
general, that's how it goes with like when it's like a iconic franchise that they're trying to like do a modern
mm.
reboot. I think that's just how it goes. Like some people are
Yeah.
really excited about it and some people are like, can you just leave things? Like just leave it. It's fine.
Yeah, definitely. because it's such a
Yep.
simple idea. This kind of film, it's just like a dude
Mhm.
in a mask and a mechanic's outfit, and he just goes around killing people with no motivation. Like, there's not a lot of room to like play with that kind of character. So yeah, it's interesting that you can like mine so many sequels from a very simple concept.
Yeah. Yep. So, what does the internet think of this movie, or the public? So the letterbox average, I think, reflects that like mixed bag feeling. So they're at 3.2 stars, but the Rotten Tomatoes scores I actually think are really high. It's a tomato meter is 79% and audience score of 72%. And IMDb is 6.5 out of 10, and 82% of Google users like the movie.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So generally like pretty well liked.
Yeah, as I kind of said, I think we all said that I think they just really go with some interesting ideas where they how they write Laurie's character. Like, I think they
Mhm.
kind of really do that quite well with her trauma and how she's interacting with her family, and they kind of definitely do different themes with like kills and ends. Like with kills, it's kind of this mob mentality thing, and and in ends it's kind of like survivor guilt as well. They explore as well, kind of briefly in that one. So there's kind of really interesting things thematically and emotionally with Laurie's character. So
Yeah. Yeah. So you either like the emotion or you don't like the
yeah.
emotion. That's kind of like the feel
Mm.
I get here. Okay. Well, Martin, it was such a pleasure to record with you. And we love that we got the opportunity to have you come on the Be Critics podcast this time. So thank you so much for coming. We'll give you another opportunity to like plug all of your stuff now so that people can find you.
Yeah, this has been really fun. Thank you so much for inviting me on. This has been really great. Yeah, so I'm the host of the Film versus Film podcast. So we have a look at like recent releases and pick a subject of uh, about that film, and it could be a director, actor, a theme, and we talk about directing, writing, and acting, and score it out of 10. And we see who wins. So I pick a movie and the guest picks one. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. We are at Film versus Film podcast on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and FEF underscore podcast on, well, X now. But
Yeah.
I still call it Twitter, so we're on there as well.
Yeah, it's Twitter. It'll
So
always be Twitter.
yeah.
It's like HBO changing their name to Max. Like, that's confusing. I feel like people always just call it HBO.
Yeah. And we're pretty much everywhere you find podcasts, pretty much. So
Cool. Well, everybody definitely go check out Film versus Film podcast if you haven't already. And definitely go check out the episode that Liz and I are on because it's really, really fun, especially if you're excited for the upcoming release of the Poor Things movie with Emma
mm,
Stone. That's what it's supposed to be in anticipation of. So,
yeah. So that was the
yeah.
Weird Films podcast. So we did
Yeah.
We
Altered
picked some weird
States.
ones.
Yes, we did.
Altered States versus what did I pick? Oh,
The
your
killing
pick
of a
was
sacred deer.
Yep, or how
Hmm.
I like to call it, Spin, the Colin Farrell movie.
Yeah.
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 What's interesting is the further away we get from me watching that movie, the more I like it. I like the killing of the sacred deer.
Yeah,
But
I really like that one.
yeah,
I still really like Altered States 2, and frankly, when we finished
you're on an island on that one,
recording,
sir.
yeah. When I finished it, I was just like, hang on a sec. I went to bed and I was like, hang on a sec. Is it bottom of the list? No, it can't be. So I got up in the morning. I was like, oh, thank God it's not. Army of the Dead is at the bottom. Thank God.
That's funny. Okay. Well, Martin, again, thank you so much for coming on. It was a
Yeah.
pleasure. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 And bye, Be Critics. Thanks for tuning in to our 2018's Halloween episode. Be sure to leave us a rating, a review. Drop us a comment on YouTube and leave us an answer to our poll and Q&A section on Spotify.
You can find more information about the podcast and our whole podography on our website, bcritics.com, or you can find links to all the things on our Linktree in the episode show notes.
So this episode was the last of our spooky season episodes, and next week we're starting a Harry Potter marathon. And
So
we're
excited.
kicking it off with a guest who has never seen any of the Harry Potter movies. It's going to be a treat. So make sure that you're subscribed everywhere so that you don't miss that first one or any of them, really.
Yeah. Get to live vicariously through somebody else watching the movie. It's like literally the best thing ever.
We have some fun guests coming on throughout that whole marathon. So stay tuned.
Yeah, it should be a ton of fun. And that will help you transition from the spooky season into the holiday Christmas type season. Okay. So be sure to subscribe and follow us on all the things so you don't miss it. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts.
All right. I think that is it for this episode. So we'll see y'all on the next one.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.